We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Free Association Radio. This is Robert Phoenix, and you are listening to the 11th House. This is where we get into astrology and all forms of arcana that relate to what's happening with the stars within and the stars without. Welcome to another week here in the month of August. The dog days, they're beginning to fade away. Now remember, the dog days are when Sirius rises before the sun and actually occludes the sun, Sirius being the dog star. And we are moving towards fall and the autumnal equinox, and some things are happening astrologically on the horizon. We just went into a new moon phase, and that was last week with new moon in Leo. And we are in the new moon, or the moon in Libra today, and will be tomorrow as well. A lovely moon, if I do say so myself, since I am the custodian of a Libra moon in my charts, and it is a new moon in my charts in Libra as well. So what are we doing tonight with the new moon in Libra? We're trying to find balance, the apex point between the masculine and the feminine, that's still center, which is what Libra theoretically brings to us, the precarious balance. It's really amazing. I've had a number of people over the last 72 hours come to me for readings, and they're Libra rising. Gee, I wonder why. It's because it's the moon. They're feeling this sense that they want to connect and get balance to their emotional inner authority, or just their authority in general. It's funny, as an astrologer, sometimes we go through these patterns. And because I've had a number of people with Libra rising, and they're all kind of born in the same timeline, Pluto is in the 12th house in Libra. So I've been thinking about Pluto 12th house, and I have a new post up on my website about Pluto in the 12th house, both natally and from a transitory perspective. And really, this post was not triggered by Pluto in Libra or their clients, but what happened with Donald Trump over the weekend. And this whole Trump phenomena is so utterly fascinating, juxtaposed against the breakdown of Hillary 3000. I mean, Hillary she's either a robotoid or a clone, or there's something at the very least. I mean, let's just think of Hillary as a human, or who is a human, who has some form of brain, how do I say this? Aneurysm, breakdown. She's having a trauma. Hillary, on a human level, is being traumatized and it's getting worse. It is not getting better. Hear that? It's probably an ambulance going to pick up Hillary somewhere. It's getting worse, not getting better. This is not somebody who's going to rebound. And Hillary Clinton is in her 70s. 70s. I mean, there was a point in time where I believe the word is stentorian, the Sylvan, patrician, grandfatherly leader of the country could come in and be patient and wise, Plato's philosopher king, whether it was Johnson or Reagan, maybe even, God forbid, Bush, lines up with that sort of timeline, and leads the country. But those were different times. It was a different era. And now, because there's so much strife and conflict and duality in the world, much of which is, by the way, manufactured, somebody who is old is going to be completely and utterly decimated by the time they get to their third year in office. Now, conversely, we had a young man which came in during the last two elections, in one Barack Hussein Obama. Where did it ever become a good idea to elect a president named Barack Hussein Obama? I mean, at what point did people think, oh yeah, that's a really presidential name, Barack Hussein Obama? While there was a guy, right, by the name of Osama bin Laden, and then you've got Saddam Hussein, all kind of echoing in the background of all of our minds. Oh yeah, it's a great idea to elect this guy. He's going to lead us into the 21st century, deeper into the 21st century. It makes no sense at all. But what happened was, if we go back in time, 2007, right? You're going to follow me here. Where was Jupiter? 2007. I'll tell you where it was. Actually, where was Jupiter? Yeah, it was in Pisces. It was in Pisces. So we're expanding the potential. We're expanding the potential of anything possible, anything happening, right? We are looking for the Messiah and the Savior of the Piscean age. We are looking for the Christ incarnate. And we're in an election cycle. Now, how is that not a setup? Here comes Obama. Arising from the ocean, glittering, wet, shining, new. Jupiter in Pisces. Expanding upon the shores of our imagination. He is an archetypal projection. He's new. Everybody before him has been a whiter shade of pale. Procol Harum song, right? And on the Democratic side, it is push and shove to and fro with Hillary Rodham Clinton. On the Republican side, it's all old, tired, white flesh turning to gray, John McCain. So Obama comes in. And when he comes in, he's elected November 2008. Where's Jupiter? Goes from Jupiter in Pisces to what? Jupiter in Aries. That's right. Aries. Here we are again. We're going from Jupiter and Virgo to Jupiter and Libra. Same cycle, opposite. And when we hit Jupiter and Libra, which will take place on November 8th, when election night is happening, what are we looking for? Part of this show tonight is about Jupiter and Libra and the potentiality that exists around it. And there is vast potentiality with Jupiter and Libra. It is the balancing between the masculine and the feminine. Now, in order to understand that, we have to ask ourselves what our notions and definitions are of masculine and feminine. Because even now, there are multiple variations of what that is. There's a traditional masculine and feminine, which really is like probably 1999. And then there's post-masculine and feminine, which is this transverse world that we're living in. So, we hold the mirror up to where we are and kind of where we're headed. So Jupiter and Libra could be, we're going to balance the masculine and feminine by more men becoming women and more women becoming men. That's one, trust me, that is one interpretation of Jupiter and Libra. But that's only a modern and, postmodern version of Jupiter and Libra. Before everybody was so into hormones and tuck and fold, Jupiter and Libra was really about something more traditional, that men and women and the macro version of the divine, the masculine and feminine divine would be balanced out. And I still think that has potentiality. But because we're living in a time where there are these wrinkles and creases in our consciousness, then Jupiter and Libra might actually also entertain this alternate dimension. The other thing with Jupiter and Libra, people are looking for justice. Now remember, Libra is about the scales of justice, the scales of balance, and Jupiter expands everything. So we think about the masculine and feminine, Aries, Libra, because this is, the polarity of the scales. But we also think about Jupiter just exploding and this need for everybody to find their own justice, to find their own status quo, whoever they are. And the way we're headed is that people are not as concerned about the truth with the capital T. They're more concerned about the truth with a lower t, which means it's their truth. Like you could hit people right now with this idea that there's a greater truth involved in kind of where they are, what we're doing, where we're headed. And if they look at that truth with the capital T, then we can all get on the same page. And I talked about this on Friday because we have so many vested interests and special interest groups that what's predominant is truth with a lowercase t. And everybody's got their own version of it. And if you want to enlighten people or bring things up that may actually change their POV, then they're not going to hear it. It's like, screw you, thanks, this is my truth. So from another level, Jupiter and Libra has to do with balancing not just the masculine and the feminine, not just this new postmodern transgenic masculine and feminine, but it's also the old version of the truth versus the new version of the truth. One which is objective and the other which is subjective. And if we're all running around with subjective versions of the truth, well, boys and girls, I'm sorry to say we're fucked. Because life is an irony and life is a paradox. And the paradox is that we're all center of each and every one of us is the center of the universe. And the paradox is that we're not. And they're all just a tiny, tiny, tiny speck of star stuff embedded in a bodysuit in this third-dimensional matrix, which theoretically is revolving around the sun. We're nothing. We're just a speck of fly shit on the grand and cosmic design of the universe, whatever that universe is. And yet, everything starts and ends with us. How profound is that? I mean, I'm sure some of you have gone down this path. It's not a new thought. But it's really profound. And that we have such immense power. Think about that. Everything starts and ends with you. And yet, you are not the end-all and be-all of that process. Wrap your head around that. That's what Jupiter and Libra, by the way, is bringing. It's bringing, hopefully, the balance, the expansion of balance, where you say, yeah, I am part of this grand cosmic design, and I'm just one piece of the holographic matrix. And yet, at the same time, my part is deep, profound resonance, and that I influence others. And that's the truth. Both are true. Neither is mutually exclusive. And Jupiter and Libra will bring this into our existence. Now, when we do deal with the opposite, or we deal with signs, we deal with opposite signs. So if we're expanding the potential for balance, if we're expanding the potential of the masculine and feminine, if we're expanding our ideas that we're nothing and we're everything, what's driving it? It is Aries, the opposite sign of Libra. It is this jolt of cosmic will through Aries that is getting refracted through the absolutely titanic, expansive energies of Jupiter. Now, Uranus is in Aries, and Uranus in Aries is kicking some ass right now. I mean, think of it. Everybody's pissed off. Everybody wants a revolution. Everybody thinks their cause is the most important cause there is. I have to say, the amount of, let me just say this. The revolution, which is being ignited, initiated, and indoctrinated into, we're all being, to some level, we're being indoctrinated into it, is really anything but revolutionary. I am amazed, astounded, and dumbfounded when I see videos of young people from Europe or even the United States. And as radical and as new age and loving, or whatever kind of rainbow consciousness these people are surfing, their ideas about supporting the status quo are alarming. They're alarming. And what's happened is we've been tricked into thinking that the status quo is what existed 35 or 40 years ago, which was white male oriented, dominated, capitalistic, overdrive, find profit at any cost, with little regard for any sort of human condition, human frailty, or human suffering. That model has been moved fast forward into where we are now. And where we are now is nothing like that. And I'll say that and back it up with an asterisk. We have some of those models in place. Greed is a rampant factor which has run through the course of time. But where we are is not the status quo. We've had 8 years of the Obama regime in conjunction with a number of planned regimes that are planetary, how do I say this? They're planetary unveilings of the same kind of consciousness and the same kind of geopolitical model. You see, there's no mistakes, right? So we have a Muslim mayor of London. We have a quote unquote, for all intents and purposes, Muslim leader of the United States, and he is. We have a new prime minister in England who's a woman. We have a prime minister or a chancellor in Germany who's a woman. And then here we have coming towards us, theoretically, a woman who would be president of the United States. So these three women, of course, then there's Justin Trudeau, who is the prime minister of Canada, who's also a woman. No, I'm just kidding. It's very effeminate, though. So there's this other kind of, again, expanding through Libra. Oh, we've got to balance out the patriarchy. We've got to balance out everything's going to. Let's just bring a wave of women leaders onto the global scene. I don't have any problem with women leaders. I don't. I have no problem at all if they are aligned with principles that, number one, don't immediately hook them up with Wall Street companies and bankers or foreign governments. They can do that. I have no problem with that. Same with a man. The problem is that globalism is now pandemic. And we are in the final days of what we would call a constitutional republic. Certainly, that was gone a long time ago. Whatever remnants of democracy there are, we're in the final days of that too. And Jupiter and Libra is trying to balance all that out. Now, from an existential standpoint, let's say that Jupiter and Libra is an energy that is moving through every single one of us, coursing through our day-to-day lives, our consciousness. Just from a tangential perspective, Jupiter and Libra is expanding to bring balance into your life, whatever that is. See, I'm talking about from a collective, the masculine and the feminine, but in your life, Jupiter and Libra is expanding to bring balance wherever Libra is in your chart. So let's say you have Libra in the second house, and you've got Jupiter transiting there. Good for you. It's going to balance out your money. It's going to balance out your finances. It's going to balance your budget. It's going to balance your bank account if you allow this energy to come in and work with it and understand the nature of the balance. Because Jupiter in the second house, you might get precious metals or resources which you don't want to use. You don't want to go too far over on the other side, and you yank the scales in one direction. Next thing you know, you don't have any assets to pay for other things. It's always striving for balance. Let's see if Jupiter and Libra going through your 11th house. Expansion. That's great expansion through friends and groups and organizations, and finding the balance between you, the individual, and the group experience. You see how this works? It's subtle math. It is the subtle math of the stars, the planets. Let's do another one. How about Jupiter in the 7th house? Well, that's bringing expansion through relationship and balancing out the first house, opposite sign, which of course would be Aries at this point, and the relationship component and aspect, and finally finding that sweet spot, that sweet balance between the two. So this is how it can work with us and bring us the midpoint between our, to some extent, dualistic experiences. Now, what's interesting is the difference between Libra and Gemini, because to some extent they're similar. And when I talk with people in my sessions, or I'm doing one-on-one work. The difference between Gemini is looking for an externalized mirror, an internalized mirror, a reflection. It's always coming inside the self and looking for that person or that experience or that thing that reflects who they are on an internal level. Libra is looking for the external thing. Libra is looking for the external balance, the externalization of that. They're a little bit different. So one of the things we're doing tonight is we're going to be doing some live readings. Hello. And they'll probably take place at the top of the second hour. Mars is in the early degrees of Sagittarius. By the way, before I go off on Mars, there's a few other things I want to talk about with Libra. Libra is the one sign of the zodiac that is not represented by a personification of an individual. What do I mean by that? So if you look at, let's say, Aquarius, right? We have the water bearer, right? Or we look at Virgo, the virgin, we have a woman. And then there's animals or insects, Scorpio, Cancer, Pisces, Taurus. So we have this kind of pantheon of humans, half humans, insects. The scorpion is an insect, right? Last time I checked. Fish. And then there's Libra, scales of balance. It is mechanical to some extent, right? It's the only sign in the zodiac that is not connected to a chimera, a person, or an actual creature, an animal. And what's fascinating about that is because in the seventh house, it is the line that divides the upper part of the charts from houses 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and the lower part of the charts, houses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it is perfect in its symbolism of being the balance, the scales, the weight between the upper and the lower, the inner and the outer, the personal and the transpersonal. It all happens with Libra. And Jupiter in Libra expands the potential for all of that in terms of awareness, but also in terms of the collectivization of a position. So it'll be interesting on election night when we have Mars going into Aquarius. As Mars moves forward, it will ultimately wind up in trine with Jupiter. And boy, that'll be an interesting time. Let's check out when that is. We're going to go into the ephemeris here, and we're going to go into 2017. So it's going to be 2016. Because, as I mentioned, Mars moves into Aquarius on election night. Deep into election night, the night of the revolution. Speaking of revolution, September 29th, Barack Obama and the UN are rolling out their Safe Cities program in America. How do you feel about that? Boy, oh boy, oh boy. The Safe Cities program means that the UN is going to get to hang out in a city near you and make sure it is safe. Because the way that they've done this whole thing, the way that they've spun it all, is that, guess what? Your city isn't all that safe now, is it? No, it's not. So we have Jupiter in Libra, and that's going to happen in September, it is one day before September 11th. It's the 10th of September. Wouldn't that be awesome if we could somehow balance the scales of 9/11, that true justice can come into play? I don't think it's going to happen. Mars is way ahead of the curve there. And when Jupiter goes into Libra, I'm sorry, it's on the 8th. That's on the 10th. Mars goes into, or Mars will be in Sagittarius at 19 degrees. So they're not going to hook up. Too bad. It would have been nice to see Mars and Libra kind of get together and cohabitate. Well, that ain't happening. If anything, Mars will begin to square Jupiter, and I'll even tell you when that is. So Jupiter goes into Libra 10. Actually, Jupiter goes into Libra in square mode with Mars on the 16th of October. So we have Mars in Capricorn squaring off against Jupiter and Libra, looking for balance. Boys and girls, I'm seeing chaos here. I'm seeing Mars and Capricorn coming in, the hammer of the oligarchy, the plutocrats with Mars and Capricorn, and Jupiter and Libra, people trying to find balance, justice, mediation. This is going to be a heavy time. So we're talking October. And let's see what we got here. Yeah, the 18th. Mars, Jupiter square. Now, when we get into October, keep in mind that we have Pluto in what sign? Capricorn. And in October, Mars actually conjuncts Pluto. How about that? And it conjuncts Pluto at 15 degrees, and it is, here we go, in a wide square. So we have Mars in Capricorn at 15, and that's on the 20th of October, and that's conjuncting with Pluto, and in a pretty wide square, 7-degree orb with Jupiter and Libra. That's a heavy time. That is a heavy-duty time because, of course, Mars in Capricorn is the hammer. It is the hammer of the plutocrats, and conjunct Pluto. It's to me, it feels like there's moves happening. There's moves taking place, and there has got to be moves taking place because the candidates of the Democrats is losing her shit. She's short-circuiting. She's frying. Who knows what's going on with her? And then Donald Trump is doing backroom deals in order for the rest of the Republican Party to get behind him and use their power and influence so that he's no longer raked over coals. These next few months, I'm going to tell you, they're going to write about this if we still have books 30 years from now. You are living in times that are so unique, so different, so strange, so in some ways paradoxical and ironic. It'll, and we can't even really see it. We know something's wrong. We know something, but it's so mind blowing right now. I mean, even if you're not a conspiracy theorist and you watch Hillary Clinton and you see what's happening with her, something's not right with this person. And you don't have to go into any kind of arcane justification. All you have to do is watch the video. And the video is amassing. It is just absolutely mind-blowing and amassing. When they let go of the balloons and look at that. Oh my. This is the type of person that you want to sit down and go toe-to-toe with her old business friend, Vladimir Putin, or the Chinese, or Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, come on. You know, she's snapping her head back. You ever see those little, what are they? They're like woodpecker kinds of bird doll things, and they go up and down, and they bob into a glass of water, and the water makes them go back and forward and back and forward. I mean, that was Hillary Clinton. She's like one of those little woodpecker dolls pecking. I mean, it's just bizarre. And then she, kind of goes, I'm going to go with him. I'm going to be foolish. Because whether it's a clone or whether it's her for real, she's obviously in a malfunction mode, and learning how to deal with it, cope with it. My God, is this who we're so desperate to fucking elect? I mean, if you got elected a woman, why don't you just go for Jill Stein? At the very least, her platform is interesting. But if you do that, then it's probably a vote for Hillary. It's really, even if they rig the machines, maybe somehow Trump, when he was on his hands and knees about a week ago, as Pluto crossed his sun in the 12th house, or his sun crossed Pluto in the 12th house, he was able to make a deal and become a supplicant. Maybe that will turn the tide. But, oh, my God. Hillary's just breaking down. And there's no two ways about it. There's a new video out where it is not from that long ago. She's dealing with protesters in her own party. Do you think Trump has protesters? The only protesters in Trump's circle are the people that are at the upper echelons of the Republican Party that don't want him elected. The people support Donald Trump. They don't support Hillary Clinton. And here's that balance that Jupiter and Libra we're trying to work out. Okay, on one hand, we got a guy who's, whatever you feel or think about Trump, people are behind him. And then you have Hillary, who's an utter disaster. And the people are not behind her. And yet, the MSM is inflating her like a helium balloon at Disneyland. So here we are, we're trying to balance things out. She's not fit. So that leaves us with Barack Obama and the UN, of course, Safe Cities Initiative, and the potential for a third, fourth, fifth term. Why not? Maybe by the time Obama is done, his daughter can run and take his place in some form of generational transition. All right, so why don't we do this? Why don't I play a little bit of music here? Since we're about 40 minutes into this gig, play a little bit of music, and I'll catch my breath, and we'll come back and we'll talk about a few other astrological goodies. And planets are about to go retrograde, or come out of retrograde. These are all very, very important aspects. What do I want to play now? Again, because I am now on YouTube, I got to be cool. I can't play a lot of commercial stuff. So where am I? Can't play that. Can't play that. Played that last week. Let's see where we got here. It's amazing how many things have rights and mechanicals associated with them. Boy, oh boy. Let's see what I got. Let's see if this will be interesting. Let's put a little shakuhachi music. The shakuhachi is one of my favorite instruments. Japanese flute. I don't know who does this piece of music. That's how generic it is. Nothing like the peaceful tones of the shakuhachi flutes to take us back to a more simple, basic, Zen-like existence. Because the complexity of the modern world is almost too much for all of us to handle. I mean, we are biological analog beings. And we were not meant to, in some ways, to live in this absolute rush. And when I say rush, I don't mean in the sense that, when you do something that excites your endocrine system, your adrenal glands. No, it's not like it's almost like a crush of events and information and data. We are under these waves, these tsunami-like waves from the outer, the collective experience, and to some extent even our own personal lives. And we weren't really designed, in some ways, to live in a world where we're all swimming in electromagnetic fog. And the events that happen at a breakneck pace. I mean, think about this. Let's just break this down. Excuse me. And this does have to do with astrology because we're dealing in this time where Neptune and Saturn are dancing back and forth. The fog of Neptune and the hardcore reality of Saturn and Sagittarius and writing new laws. And we have all of these events, these false flags, these psyops. And that's just one level. That's just one level we're dealing with. It's the, every other day now there's a new cop shooting and a new cop killing, some of which are probably real and some of which aren't. And we're supposed to process this? How do we process an overload of information? We can't. At some point, we just shut it down. Like, enough is enough. I mean, how many people can just stay open, keep their hearts open to the simulated breakdown of our society and our culture? You can't. You just can't. So another one happens, just take care of it, just deal with it. Jesus Christ, please. When was the last time we had it was about a week ago. It's all part of a plan, by the way. And the plan is to run us down and to bring us to a sense of just complete surrender, collapse, and demoralization. So listening to the Zen flutes, the shakuhachi, to bring us back into a more still and steady space. It's a wonderful thing. So we were talking about retrograde planets before we went on break. And Saturn finally goes direct after a few months here, and that's on the 13th. So we're talking fairly soon, like this coming Saturday. And Saturn direct in Sagittarius, from a collective level, might actually be interesting in terms of what might happen with the two candidates that are running for office, potentially Hillary Clinton, because Saturn is the application of justice. Sagittarius is the creation and formation of law. It's all retrograde. It's all been going backwards, moving forward. It might be interesting. To some extent, for you listening out there, Saturn is all about your own personal authority, your own personal autonomy, your own personal quest to have something sovereign and real, and to ground that with the nature of Saturn, which is discipline, focus, responsibility. So if you want to be free, you got to take responsibility for it. Sagittarius wants to be free. Saturn says you've got to take responsibility for your freedom. Now, it would be wonderful and beautiful if you could reach a level of attainment of pure freedom. Wouldn't it be great? Nothing bothers you. Absolutely nothing bothers you. Nothing. No asshole on the road cut in front of you. Doesn't bother you. No, God bless you. He doesn't bother you. Doesn't bother you whether you lose your job to somebody else who will do it for less, maybe a robot. No, it doesn't bother you. Doesn't bother you whether or not the person you're in a relationship with decides to leave for whatever reason. It doesn't bother you. Doesn't bother you if you have good fortune. Same thing. It's all part of a continuum. That's what theoretically being free is. Nothing bothers you. Nothing phases you. That you're the same content, peaceful, loving, harmonious person. That's one definition of freedom, that nothing phases you. You're the same in the bodysuit as you are in eternity. But there are other definitions of freedom that are worth looking at and pursuing. What if being free was being able to allow yourself to express on a wide spectrum of emotion? What if being free was to say, I can be happy, I can be blissful, and I can be ecstatic. And at the other end of the spectrum, I can be righteously angry. And I can pull out whatever it is I need to in terms of dealing with people that are not fair, not equitable. So there's a wide latitude of what it is to be free. Saturn in Sagittarius. So if you want to be free, you have to become responsible for your own process around freedom. And on the 13th of August, we move into a direct phase of Saturn. Everything else is pretty much retrograde. Of course, Virgo, Mercury and Virgo, will join that retrograde parade on the 31st at 29 degrees. Here's where we get into September surprise. Not October surprise, but September surprise. This Mercury retrograde will bring out figures, percentages, data that will essentially illustrate how slow the economy is really moving, and also the breakdown of the service sector of the economy, because that's what Virgo is. It's all about service. But I keep coming back to the fact that I don't think Obama wants to leave. I'm sorry. I just saw him in my head as I was talking about all this. He does not want to leave. I haven't seen any president in recent memory that was as active towards the end of his presidency than Barack Obama. This guy, I've seen him on TV more in the last 3 months than at any other time. He does not want to split. Sorry, I'm just sort of having his image course through my head. Why don't we do this? Why don't I open up the phone lines here for some astrological action? 347-308-8995, 347-308-8995. If you want to call in and do a reading, looks like somebody's ready to rock and roll. Let's see what they have here. Hi there. Thank you for calling in. Hello?
Hi.
Hey, who's this?
Hi. Hi, it's Jean. Hi, Robert.
Gene. Hey, what's happening, Gene?
Oh, not a lot. Not a lot, and then lots and lots of stuff.
I know. Isn't that the way it works, right? There's nothing and everything happening all simultaneously.
I know. I shared a post on there for you to look at, and anybody else who wants to, but it was really fascinating about living in a simulated reality.
Yes.
Oh
it's in
my
the
gosh.
chat room. I see it in there. It is a YouTube post.
Yes,
We're living in the simulated reality. Yeah. So what if we are?
Well, it was very interesting because he said there's scientists now that have discovered like self-correcting programs actually in our reality, and other scientists that have found pixelated what do you call it? Pixelated in our reality. That, you know, when it says why would it be pixelated if it were not a simulation?
Right. So what's interesting about these findings is that most of them have come about in the what we call the post-digital age, where we even have language like pixelation.
Right.
Pre-digital, matrix Earth, we didn't. I mean, pixelated might have been a very, very minor terminology. Like the first time I ever heard of pixelation was when I was living in Seattle, Washington, and it was around 1990. And there was a guy that I hung out with. He used to work at Microsoft, and he had a lot of money. Young guy, a lot of money, like an early Microsoft money, and he had a widescreen projection TV in his really cool kick-ass bachelor pad down by the waterfront in Seattle. And we watched movies in his place, and he talked about pixelation, and he talked about images that were digital in nature, and that there were. It's almost like there's a sort of a fractal sort of fissure in the kind of the holographic rendering of the projection.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first time I'd heard of pixelation. But if we go back to, say, 1970, nobody's talking about pixelation because we're not having a digital experience. We're living in an analog world. And is the analog world the same kind of simulated reality that our digital reality is a part of? I'm not sure. Because the terminology for all these things didn't exist until we're post-digital.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Well, what's beyond digital? I mean,
what's beyond digital? Well, good question. That's a really good question. I think this whole notion of the simulacra of reality, or the digital experience, or the simulated version of reality. First of all, it goes back a long ways, right? Like if you go back into Hinduism, they talk about the concept of Maya, and that this is all an illusion, right?
Right.
So in some ways, it's really old. It's really ancient. Plato talks about the cave, and there's a whole reality going on outside of the cave versus inside of the cave.
Right.
So the dualistic nature of the universe is not necessarily kind of a new thing. What I think is new, or at least is contemporary with the vocabulary, is that we are living in a reality that is somehow reflective of a digital consciousness that we've become more accustomed and attuned to. And what's beyond digital? I mean, who knows? I mean, Is God digital? Is God organic? What are we really talking about here?
Right.
And if God is everything, then God would be both digital and analog. It'd be synthetic and organic. Wouldn't Monsanto love that? As part of their argument for being valid. So, I'm not sure that that's necessarily wrong. I think that there might be some merit to that. I also think that the scientists are always revising their models, and they're always revising the nature of reality. If you go back into Newtonian physics and Newtonian mechanics, it's very different than sort of the Heisenbergian model. And the Heisenbergian model might even be very different than the theory of everything. So, we're always revising our relationship to the modality of reality, and a lot of it is based upon sort of the language and the collective understanding and awareness, and the whole notion of novelty. And novelty is certainly a digital kind of experience, for lack of a better term. And we keep feeding into the digital. You and I are having a digital moment right now. Kids keep playing their video games and their computer games. So as far as as something that's potentially expanding, or maybe not expanding, but just there, we're feeding into it. That's also part of this, thing that we're working through. What I think ultimately at the end of the day, what are we trying to get to? What are we here for? And I think that those questions have changed, just like reality. Yeah, to the extent that people can interpret it. 30 years ago, we're having a different discussion about why we're here. Now we're here because we want to kind of get through this time and understand it and liberate ourselves from the oppressive forces that want to constrain and create another reality that is less free, less liberated, and less potentially feeling. So, interesting times, and where are we? We're Moon and Libra, and we're trying to balance it all out. That's what we're here. We're doing our best to do. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Can I ask a question, an astrological question?
Sure. Let's go in there. Let's go into it, and let's go to the digital mind of the astrological logos. Let's get into it here. And let me see if I have your stuff lined up. See if I can find you. I might still have you in here. If not, I'll have to get your info again.
Well, I can give it to you.
Yeah, let me just see though. I might surprise myself. You never know. Let's see what we got. All right. Why don't you go ahead and let's go here and hit me with your digits, as they say. Go ahead.
Okay. It's June the 25th, 1954.
Okay.
At 1:50 a.m.
1:50 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And where was that?
In Marietta, Georgia.
Marietta, Georgia. Okay. Hold on a second. Okay. There it is. And we're there. And we're there. June 25th, 1954. Marietta, Georgia. There you are. Go ahead. Ask away.
Okay. Well. The question is my oldest daughter, and I don't know why we seem to be going through this. I'm not exactly sure what it is we're going through, but she's a Gemini, and so I don't know how you do that. If you had her numbers, could you?
Well, I don't, but if she's a Gemini, her sun is transiting through your second house. And if you have people in your life that are second house people, there are two ways in which, or there are a few ways in which they can impact you. But really, the bottom line is it gets you down into your core and about what your values are on a physical level. Sometimes the second house can be really related to survival. Like if you've got people that have Saturn in the second house or sometimes Neptune in the second house, you're going to have a really tough time getting through their life or a transit or an experience, because the second house is really all about food, shelter, clothing, and then working its way up Maslow's kind of hierarchy of needs until you get to ultimately some other higher, more abstract place. So Gemini people would move through your second house with their sun, or they'd be there in your second house with their sun. And they would sort of bifurcate your consciousness and get you to think about this and that. They would get you to sort of at some level split what your value system is. Like you could be very involved and engaged in things like convalescence or healing or service. But on the other hand, with Gemini, you would get the burden, or you might get the challenge of being sort of able to support or sustain that person on a fundamental, basic, sort of foundational level. When is her birthday?
It's June the 10th, 1975.
Okay. June 10, 1975?
Mm-hmm. She was born at 6:13 in the morning.
Okay. Now, who is this?
My daughter, Jennifer.
Daughter, Jennifer. Okay. June 10th, 1975. I'm just going to go into the ephemeris. Does she hit you up for money?
Oh no.
Okay.
She's very generous, but she's like, I don't know. It's almost like she distanced herself from me, and I
see. Yeah. All right. Say no more. Let me just look at this. June 10th, because we have to go into things like June the 10th. So she has, she's a double Gemini, sun and moon. So that's a new moon. So that's the mother with the moon in Gemini. And then she has Mercury in Gemini, a lot of Gemini. And she has Venus in Leo, Mars in Aries, Jupiter in Aries. So it's a lot of fire. It's a lot of fire and a lot of air. So she's pretty willful. Saturn in Cancer. Now, the Saturn in Cancer piece is important because she's got a Pluto opposition to Saturn right now. So transiting Pluto, opposing Saturn in Cancer. Now, Cancer is the sign of the mother. Saturn is structure and form, can often represent the father in the charts. She grew up in a household with both you and her father, or just you?
No, he was gone.
So Saturn in Cancer means you became the mother and the father.
Yeah.
Because that's it's kind of like my own son, right? My son has Saturn in Cancer, and his mother is kind of like very masculine and whatever. So he's got a mother-father thing with his mother. So Pluto is opposing her natal Saturn, and this is going to go on for roughly about a year and a half. And what she's trying to do is she's trying to balance out something that's internal with her. But with Pluto, there's kind of like the death of cancer or the death of the father, mother. This is all temporary. You're not going to die. But if she's distancing herself, this is what it feels like to me. And she wants to come into her own kind of realization and actualization of who she is. Is she married or is she, what's her status?
Yes, she's married and she has 2 children.
Okay. All right. And what's going on with her marriage? Is that okay?
No.
So
no,
this is it now. See, this is where
problem.
she's becoming. All right. So here's the pattern now. She now becomes the mother that's the father. So this is what's happening. And Pluto opposing Saturn here, activating that. So, this is what happens. I've seen this so many times. Astrology aside, I've just seen this so many times with families and lives where things just get reincarnated and acted out. To that extent, maybe reality is a simulation, because all we do is we just continue to plug in our programs, copy them, and then download them onto the next generation. Perhaps that's the case.
So we got to break the cycle.
Well, one would hope. One would hope. So for my own personal experience, I wound up kind of breaking a cycle on a paternal side for my kid and my family. But on another side, I did not break that cycle, because there had been a cycle of divorce going back a couple generations. My father held in there, and he continued to be with my mother, but the challenge there was, the connection with the children, i.e. myself, and I felt like I kind of broke that sort of thing on my own with my son, but I didn't break it on the relationship side. So we try the best we can, and we can end these generational sort of cyclical patterns. Sounds like she's going through that now, and that's what's triggering it.
Okay. Well, it must be really maddening for you to be able to have all of this information and then look at it and then try to figure out the dynamics of the relationship that you're in.
For me?
Yeah, for yourself.
Oh, sometimes I just want to be blissfully ignorant, Jean.
Yeah, just you don't ask somebody what their sign is.
And when I'm blissfully ignorant, it gets me into trouble.
When was that? In the 70s? Hey, what's your sign?
There's one of my favorite songs of all time is by Hall & Oates. It's a lesser-known song, but it's called No Brain, No Pain. And the refrain is, don't try to rise above it. It's better below.
Unconsciousness.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for calling in, Jean. I'm going to put you back on hold.
Okay,
and
thank you so much.
Allow your daughter to go through her thing and become the realization of what you had to go through with her, and allow her to pivot, and she will, and she'll come out of it, and she'll realize that you're a lot more closer than she ever thought of. Okay?
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, say hi to your sister for me.
I will.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ah, yes, it is 11:15 here in South Central Texas. You're listening to 11th House Radio. I'm Robert Phoenix, and I think we've got another show coming up really soon on Gaia TV with Regina and myself. And, the last time I was back there, we did 2 shows, one for summer, which I felt pretty good about. But I got to tell you, man, the fall show that Regina and I did was off the charts. It was so good. So you have something to look forward to. If you were somebody who signed up for my 11th House Academy, you could be joining me tomorrow night on a webinar at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time and talking about astrology and learning more about the finer points, the more esoteric points of astrology. And there's still time to do that. There's still time to be able to sign up for the 11th House Academy. The course is there. We've got 16 hours of astrological information, insight, knowledge. There's lectures, there's labs. There's so much work that we've done on this. And the production is fantastic. The information is rock solid. And you go to my website, robertphoenix.com, and you can actually download this course. And you're going to get a year's worth of webinars, 2 hours every single month, where we're going to talk astrology. You'll get a natal chart, you'll get a 25-page report, and you'll get 16 hours worth of astrological instruction. And if you enter in the code FAR10, F-A-R-10, go to my website, sign up, enter that code in, you're going to get 10% off. So the first webinar is tomorrow night. And if you're a part of it, you'd be there, or you could be there. So I think what I'm going to do tonight is I think I'm actually going to sign off a little bit early. I've been doing readings all day today. It's been like O'Hare Airport, and the planes have just been coming in and out, in and out, in and out. And so I've been really stacked with sessions and clients. Now, I do have some good news in that I'm launching a new show. And that's going to be on every morning, every single morning. And I haven't figured out the time yet, but it's looking more like 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, which means that if you're listening on the East Coast, you'll get it at 9. If you're listening on the West Coast, crack of dawn, 6 a.m. It's called 15 Minutes of Flame. And it's all about what's happening here and now in this simulated matrix of reality. 30 minutes of intense news, rants, metaphysics, and a little bit of astrology. Concentrated. It's like espresso, double espresso in the morning. All right, so why don't we get on out of here? Go to my website, robertphoenix.com. You can read my latest post on Donald Trump, Pluto in the 12th house, and the intensity and power of Pluto in the 12th house, as well as the sacrifice that is often involved with it. So let's get on out of here. Have a great Monday. It's going to be a very interesting week ahead. Starting off on a Libra moon and shifting into the Scorpio moon on Monday night and Tuesday. So you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. Thanks for tuning in tonight. I'm Robert Phoenix. Have a fantastic week. Here's Philip K. Dick.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.